There are revelations that provoke reflection. Others destabilize everything we thought we understood about the world, and a select few do both at the same time. Dolores Cannon, a researcher with decades of experience in regressive hypnosis, stated something that could profoundly shake your perception of reality. According to her, many people live as if they are in a staged set, repeating routines, feelings, and decisions that aren't really their own. And more than that, she said that much of what we call reality is in fact a carefully structured illusion, a collective simulation created with a very specific purpose. To many, this sounds like fiction, but the hundreds of accounts she collected over the years say otherwise. There's an invisible line between what we believe is real and what actually is. And crossing that line isn't comfortable. It's confusing, challenging, and for some, it's liberating. Have you ever felt like you're just repeating the same cycles, as if something essential is missing even when everything seems normal? Dolores said that's a clear sign your soul is trying to awaken. She didn't say this as a metaphor. For her, the physical world was just one layer, a stage, and behind that curtain there's something much larger happening. According to her studies, there are people who aren't from around here. They came voluntarily from other planes to help humanity's transition of consciousness. But upon incarnating, they forgot who they really are. And now they live trying to remember. If this topic intrigues you, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps the content reach more people and motivates us to continue bringing reflections that really matter. While conducting thousands of hypnosis sessions, Dolores noticed a pattern. People from different parts of the world, cultures and beliefs reported similar memories. The feeling of having agreed to come to Earth, of being on a mission, and that the reality we live in is just one among many. Some described the planet as a large testing environment where the soul learns through dense and emotional challenges. Others reported that many of those around us function as extras, existing to fill scenes, but without a deep individual purpose. This idea may seem offensive at first glance, but it's not about judgment. For Dolores, this was just an observation of the complexity of the human experience, and understanding this was the first step for those beginning to awaken. She claimed that there are 3 waves of volunteers. The first arrived after the explosion of the atomic bombs, at a time when the future of Earth seemed uncertain. These were highly evolved souls who, upon incarnating, felt an immense disconnect with material life. They felt displaced, misunderstood, often depressed. The second wave came with the aim of preparing the way, more silent, more observant, but equally powerful. And the third wave, younger, already carries a different vibration, more adapted, with the mission to break down old systems. All of this, according to Dolores, is interconnected to a vibrational shift of the Earth, a slow but inevitable process, and whoever feels the call is not alone, even if they often feel that way. Perhaps the most impactful part of her theory is the claim that time isn't linear. Dolores said that the past, present, and future occur simultaneously. When a person accesses a past life in hypnosis, they're not remembering, they're experiencing it in real time, in another frequency of consciousness. This changes everything. It means that choices made now can directly influence other existences, including those that have already happened from our conventional perspective. And more, according to her, if a soul awakens here and now, it reverberates in multiple directions of time. Each small awakening affects the entire system, and when we begin to see life from this angle, our attitudes gain a new weight, a new responsibility. The idea that life is a staging with greater purposes isn't comfortable, and it doesn't have to be. Dolores never said this lightly or simplistically. She knew that confronting this type of information generates resistance. After all, if all this is true, what can we still consider as real? What is free will if there are roles to be fulfilled? And what's the point of fighting for things that may be part of a larger script? These questions don't have easy answers, but that's precisely why she dedicated her life to deeply investigating each fragment of these stories. And the more she listened, the more she realized there's something moving behind the surface, something that can no longer be ignored. During the sessions, many people reported having chosen their families before being born, as if each connection, even the most difficult ones, was part of a larger plan. Dolores heard mothers who said they had reunited with children from previous lives, husbands who were ancient spiritual masters, and even enemies who returned with different roles, all in the name of soul growth. She reinforced that there are no victims on the spiritual plane. Everything that happens in some way was accepted before incarnation as an opportunity for learning. This idea doesn't serve to justify suffering, but to bring a broader perspective on why we live certain experiences. According to her, there is no coincidence. Each encounter, each pain, each joy all make up a narrative designed by greater intelligences, and understanding this can completely change how we face our daily lives. One of the most intriguing points is Dolores's explanation about chronic diseases and pains. She said that many of them aren't caused only by physical or emotional factors, but by memories from other existences that remain active in the energy body. There were reports of people who had been feeling pain for years, and upon accessing experiences from past lives where they were injured or traumatized, these pains simply disappeared. Science can't yet explain this clearly, but the volume of cases recorded by her was impressive. Dolores never demanded that people believe. She only asked that they listen carefully, because according to her, the simple act of considering that the soul carries deep records can open doors to a cure that goes beyond what we are used to seeking. She also talked about the existence of different levels of reality, as if we were living in overlapping layers. Some people, according to her reports, could transition between these layers in altered states of consciousness. In one of these experiences, a woman described waking up in a world almost identical to ours, but with small differences, as if she had crossed an invisible boundary. Dolores suggested that we constantly live between parallel realities and that our decisions make us slip between them without realizing it. Each choice, each thought, alters the course of the line we are on. And this explains why sometimes we have a sense of déjà vu, or that something has subtly changed around us. Perhaps it's not just imagination, perhaps it's real movement between layers of existence. Dolores also approached the question of dreams with great seriousness. For her, many dreams are in fact real experiences that happen while the body sleeps, but consciousness shifts to other planes. In some reports, people met deceased relatives, received guidance, or visited places they had never seen before, but which later proved to be real. She said that during sleep, the soul temporarily frees itself from the body and returns to its origin, as if it were an intermission between the scenes of life. And therefore recurring or intense dreams shouldn't be ignored. They may contain clues about who we are, what we came to do, and even what kind of help we are receiving from other levels of consciousness. According to her, the spiritual world is more present than we imagine. We just need to pay attention. Another central aspect in her discoveries was how human beings are connected to the earth. Dolores explained that the planet is a conscious being, and that we are connected to it in an energetic and symbiotic way. She heard reports from people who, in altered states, said they heard the voice of the earth, felt its sadness or joy, as if the planet reacted directly to our actions. For her, environmental destruction wasn't just a physical problem, but a consequence of a spiritual disconnection. When humanity forgets that it's part of something bigger, it begins to act as if it was separate. And this illusion of separation is the root of many conflicts. Awakening would then be not only remembering who we are, but also remembering that we are part of everything, including the earth itself. Many of the revelations made by Dolores weren't easily received. She was constantly questioned, discredited, and even ridiculed in some circles. But she never retreated. She continued listening, researching, and rigorously recording each case. She said she wasn't there to convince anyone, but to leave a legacy of information that sooner or later would make sense to anyone who was ready. Today, with the advancement of investigations into consciousness and quantum physics, many of the concepts she presented are being discussed more seriously, not as absolute truths but as possible hypotheses. And perhaps it's precisely this openness that she always wanted, the freedom to think beyond, to imagine other possibilities, and not to settle for ready-made answers. She also talked about the importance of humanity's current moment. According to Dolores, we are going through a transition that goes far beyond what the eyes can see. It's a profound vibrational shift in which human beings begin to realize they aren't just a body, but expanding consciousness. This transition doesn't happen immediately, nor is it the same for everyone. Each person awakens in their own time, according to their degree of openness and inner readiness. Dolores compared this moment to a great collective calling, where those who listen begin to see life in a new way. It's not necessary to abandon everything, nor to run away from reality, but rather to learn to see through it, understanding that there are more subtle levels of existence that coexist with what we call normal. And this understanding changes everything: the choices, the values, the fears, and even the meaning of suffering. The transition she spoke of involved a rise in collective consciousness, which would directly affect how we relate to matter, time, and even death. Dolores explained that death for many souls is just a change of scenery. Life continues, but at another frequency, and those who understand this no longer fear it irrationally. The pain of loss still exists, but it gains another meaning. She reinforced that human suffering is often rooted in forgetting the eternal nature of the soul. When we remember that we are more than this body, more than this life, we begin to live with more presence, responsibility, and serenity. And this in itself is a form of healing. Consciousness doesn't die. It just shifts, learns, observes, and returns, bringing with it the marks and lessons of each journey lived. Another point that impressed in the accounts Dolores collected was the repetition of symbols, archetypes, and images. People who had never met spoke of healing rooms on spaceships, spiritual councils that guided reincarnation, and libraries where they could access records of their own lives. These accounts to many sound improbable, but for her, they indicated that there is a universal memory that everyone accesses in expanded states of consciousness. Dolores suggested that these spaces are real on a non-physical level, and that when we access certain mental frequencies, we can reach them. She never imposed these ideas as dogmas, but presented the patterns with clarity. And she left a question in the air: how can people so different in distinct locations and times report such similar images and experiences without ever having communicated? Dolores also received accounts about the spiritual planning of life before birth. Many people in regressions described meetings where they were guided about the trials they would face, the bonds they would form, and even the diseases they might have. Nothing was imposed. There was always choice, but a choice made with spiritual awareness, far from limited human logic. These souls chose to incarnate even knowing the difficulties, because they knew they would grow with them. Dolores said that remembering this, even vaguely, can change how we deal with challenges. Instead of feeling like victims of fate, we begin to act as conscious participants in a larger project, and this rescues the dignity of the soul. Life ceases to be a sequence of accidents and becomes a purposeful path, even in the darkest stretches. She also talked about the idea of a soul contract. According to Dolores, before birth, we make agreements with other souls to live joint experiences that propel us to grow. These contracts can involve love, friendship, abandonment, betrayal, and even losses. They are like sacred pacts of mutual evolution. Often the soul that hurts us the most is the one that loves us the most on a spiritual level, for accepting to fulfill a difficult role to make us evolve. It's an uncomfortable but powerful idea. Dolores didn't say this to justify abuse or passivity, but to remember that there is a larger perspective that goes beyond what we can see here, and that by recognizing this, we can transform resentment into learning, anger into understanding, and pain into wisdom. This outlook changes relationships, changes stories, and changes destinies. Over time, Dolores realized that spiritual awakening doesn't depend on religion, age, or education. It happens when the soul is ready. Many of the people who sought her out couldn't even explain why. They just felt that something was wrong with the way they saw the world. And as they opened up, they began to realize that their doubts were, in fact, reminders, fragments of something they had forgotten. Dolores said that awakening is, above all, a process of remembrance of what we are, what we came to do, and that we have never been alone even in the deepest moments of silence. Every time someone awakened, she believed that all of humanity advanced a little more, because in the end, awakening is a collective movement. One soul lights up, and that light helps others to see as well. One of the most striking phrases that Dolores repeated was that nothing is by chance, not even the fact that you are listening to these words now. For her, the soul attracts the knowledge it needs at the right moment. If this content has reached you, perhaps it's because some part within you is ready to remember. It's not about accepting everything blindly, but about observing, reflecting, and feeling what makes sense. Each person has their own rhythm, their own time, and there's no right or wrong in that. What exists is the continuous movement of consciousness, always seeking to expand. Dolores never offered absolute truths. She offered questions, and that's precisely what makes her legacy so powerful. Because in a world where everyone wants to give answers, she taught us the value of learning to ask again, with courage and with openness. She also warned us about the danger of distraction. She said that the modern world was designed to keep us too busy to think about who we are. Constant distractions, information overload, and fear subtly spread weaken the capacity for inner connection. And that's why awakening is so rare. Not because it's difficult, but because few give themselves the necessary time to be silent. Dolores suggested simple practices: listen more to intuition, observe repeated signs, perceive thought patterns. Nothing complicated. Because according to her, true awakening doesn't come from great rituals, but from small moments of presence. A conscious choice here, a gesture of compassion there. And little by little, the fog begins to dissipate. Life then reveals another dimension hidden beneath everyday gestures. In her last years of life, Dolores said she felt an urgency in the air, a feeling that many souls were awakening at the same time, as if something important was about to happen. She wasn't talking about catastrophes or scary predictions. She was talking about transformation, about a silent change, almost invisible to the eyes, but real, something that begins inside each one and that spreads little by little, without fanfare. This vision wasn't based on belief, but on hundreds of accounts from ordinary people like you and me who awakened spontaneously. And each account, even with its particularities, brought the same essence: the reminder that life is more than it seems, that there is a plan, and that we are here to fulfill it, even when we don't know exactly how. Dolores left us with an invitation, not a conclusion. An invitation to look at reality with different eyes, to listen to the silence with more attention, and to trust more in the wisdom that dwells within us. She believed that the future of humanity doesn't depend on great leaders or technologies, but on the awakening of ordinary individuals, simple people who begin to ask questions, who change their choices, who treat others with more respect, and who begin to live with more intention. Because in the end, we are not here to survive, we are here to remember, and remembering requires courage. It requires us to get out of autopilot and return to ourselves. That's the true spiritual path, according to her, to return inward, only then to transform what is outside. If you've come this far, it's because something within you is looking for something more. Perhaps you don't know what it is yet. Perhaps you're just beginning, and that's okay. Awakening isn't a destination, it's a process, one step at a time. Sometimes slow, sometimes confusing, but always transformative. There's no single way to live it. But there's a common point among all who awaken: the feeling that life finally begins to make sense. And when that happens, there's no going back. Therefore, if this video touched on something you feel but can't explain, share it with someone who is also searching. And if you want to join us on this journey of discovery, subscribe to the channel. We still have much to remember together.